Resourceful Designer, Episode 90, Peripherals for Your Design Business.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. He chose the trumpet in music class because it only had 3 keys. Mark Dickout.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy that you've joined me this week as I discuss peripherals for your design business. Now, this is actually kind of a continuation of episode 88 from a couple of weeks ago, but more on that a little bit later. For now, I want to send a shout out to everybody who is listening to me while on their commute. Now, recently, I started asking questions in the Facebook group, or not in the Facebook group, of people asking to join the Facebook group. Facebook just made this available recently, where group owners are allowed to ask questions of anybody asking to join the group. And by the way, if you're not part of the group already and you would like to join, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/group and it'll redirect you to where you can join. But when you do click join, there are 3 questions that pop up. And one of the questions is, do you listen to the Resourceful Designer podcast? And I say right in the question, it's okay if you don't. You will not be denied access into the group if you don't listen. But many people have told me that they do listen on their commute to and from work. Some of them with a 30-minute commute, some all the way up to like 3+ hours in the morning and in the evening. So if you're listening to me right now on the bus, in a cab, on a train, or if you're driving yourself, thank you for tuning in on your voyage. And I hope if you're on your way to work, you have a great day. And if you're on the way back, I hope you had a productive day and that you're going to enjoy a nice evening. Now, while on the subject of the Facebook group, if you have asked to join the group recently and I have not approved you yet, it's because you have not answered the 3 questions. Go back and ask to join again, and the 3 questions should pop up. And once you answer them, I will allow you into the group. At the time I'm recording this, there's about 30 people that are waiting to become members, but they have not yet answered the questions. So if you're one of them, just go back and try to see about joining again, and it should remind you that you haven't answered the questions. And once you do so, I'll let you in. Now, I've had an amazing week so far. I've had 5 new jobs come in, 3 podcast cover arts, 1, I'd say mid-size website, although that one, I still haven't got the contract signed on it, but it looks like everything's going through. I had a logo design and a poster for an upcoming holiday event that I'm working on. Come to think of it, that's 6 new jobs. Hey, that's even better than I thought. So it's been a very lucrative week, I guess you can say. Although I haven't been paid for any of these things yet. I'm still waiting for some deposits and that. But I've got these jobs now on my schedule. As I said, everything except for that website that I'm still waiting for the contract. Speaking of websites, I'm finishing up 2 websites that I've been working on for a while. I expected them to be done weeks ago, but I've been waiting on clients. One client finally got me. All we were waiting for were some testimonials, and finally got me those testimonials. Now I'm in the stage where I'm just going over all the links, making sure everything is okay before we make the website live. That one should be going live hopefully by the end of the day today. And the other one, which the client just called me up yesterday, I sent them a proof, or I gave them access to the website on my test server to look at it 2 weeks ago. And crickets since then. I hadn't heard a thing. And then finally yesterday, the client called me up apologizing for the delay, but he's right in the middle. He's the head of some committee that's doing this huge Halloween event in our area. So he's just been overwhelmed, and he apologized, and I understand. But he said that he loved what I did so far, and there's just some minor changes that are going to have to be made, and I'm just waiting to receive those. So 2 big website projects, hopefully by the end of the week, will be finished. So that's how my week's been so far. Now, last episode, I announced how I'm starting a special quote-unquote podcast series just for people who support Resourceful Designer on Patreon. Now, the response that I've received from those people has been overwhelming. Next week, I'm going to choose the first consulting guest, or mentee, if you want to call them, to go over any questions that they may have regarding their design career. It might be about one day starting a business, or maybe a business they just started, they have some questions about, or maybe it's somebody that's been in this for many, many years and just want to talk strategy with me. The floor will be completely open to whatever they want to talk about. And afterwards, I'll make those calls available to everyone who is a patron of the show so they can learn from our conversation. So if you want to get in on the action and be considered for a call, or if you just want to hear the conversations afterwards, you must be a Resourceful Designer patron. Head on over to resourcefuldesigner.com/Patreon. That's Patreon. And you could sign up for as little as $1 a month in order to get access. And now, this week's Resource of the Week. This week, I chose Grammarly. I first purchased Grammarly. It was on a whim. I saw a sale. I think it was a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. I saw it on sale online. Didn't really know what it was, but it wasn't that expensive, so I decided to purchase it. And I can tell you, I've used it every day since installing it on my computer. Now, what is Grammarly? Simply put, it's a spelling and grammar checker for your computer, but it is so much more than that. As it says right on their website, Grammarly leaves outdated spelling and grammar checkers in the dust. I use it everywhere online. It's installed on my computer, so anytime I'm working in WordPress, anytime I'm posting in social media, when I'm in the Facebook group or if I'm on Twitter or anything, anytime I'm filling out a form online, it is checking my spelling and my grammar and is letting me know right then and there what sort of mistakes. Now, it's also available on my desktop and I can paste things into there, and it's a very, very intensive and very inclusive check of everything that you need to become a better writer. Now, you can set it for American or British spelling. You can also have it learn vocabulary. So if there's certain words, maybe words pertaining to our industry that might not be in the dictionary, you can add them to the dictionary. But the thing with Grammarly is it doesn't only correct, it actually teaches you. It tells you if you're using repetitive words, it warns you of stuff like weak adjectives, and it lets you know of what sort of errors you make on a regular basis. I get a report once a week that tells me, and I know my biggest problem when it comes to writing is I constantly forget to put a comma after an introductory sentence or an introductory clause. And that's the biggest mistake. And I find it, and I'm getting better. That's the way Grammarly works. It doesn't just correct your spelling and correct your grammar. It's actually teaching you so that you become a better writer. According to their website, 85% of people that use Grammarly become stronger writers. So as I said, I've had it installed on my computer for almost 2 years now. There is a free version that's very limited. I do pay for the premium version, and I think it's worth every penny because, as I said, everything I write is automatically corrected. And not just like, I know stuff like Microsoft Word has a spelling and grammar checker. This is so much more robust than that, telling you about infinitives and ending sentences with prepositions. And there's just so much. And I know myself, I have become a much better writer by using Grammarly. So if you do a lot of writing online or wherever, and you think that this might be something of interest to you, I do have an affiliate link with them. If you visit resourcefuldesigner.com/Grammarly, that's grammar with an LY at the end. And if you do use that link, I do make a small commission on the sale. I want to be transparent with that I will make a commission if you use that link. But as I've said before on the show, I only share resources that I believe in, I have used, and I can back. So if you have any questions about it before making a purchase, feel free to reach out to me. But Grammarly is one resource that I am super happy that I discovered it a couple of years ago. Now, don't worry if you're on your commute or you're driving. All links and everything that I mentioned in this show will be available by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 90. And now, peripherals for your design business. Now, as I said in the intro, I talked about some of this back in episode 88. And the funny thing is, when I decided to do that episode, it was called The Designer's Home Office Essentials. That was what I titled that episode. I came up with a list of things you needed for your office. Well, I have an Evernote notebook that I use to keep track of what sort of things I'm going to talk about in future episodes of the podcast. And I have a whole bunch of topics in there to pull from. And sometimes I'll go through and I'll say, oh, that topic looks interesting, but I don't feel like doing it this week. Or there's one, maybe I can expand, or I have to do a little bit more research on that one. Well, as I was going through my Evernote notebook, looking for a topic for this week's podcast, I came across one note that I had written back in January that was titled Peripherals for Your Design Business. And when I looked at it, most of the things, not most, but a lot of the items on that list were items I covered in episode 88. And I says, oh, well, I've already done this. But then I looked and I saw a lot of items that I did not cover in episode 88. And I said, there's some really good stuff here. It merits another episode. So we could say this is a Designer's Home Office Essentials Part 2, but I'm just going to call it the original title I had come up with it, which is just Peripherals for Your Design Business. Now, the first thing that I had on this list is a UPS power supply. Now, when I say UPS, I don't mean the store or the transport company. I'm talking about an uninterrupted power supply. And if you're not familiar with the term, what this is it's kind of a glorified power bar for your computer or for any device for that matter. But this power bar has a battery built into it. It's a battery backup. And what it's used for is when you plug any electronics or that into it, and say you have a power outage, maybe you're in the middle of a storm and a transformer gets hit by lightning, or for whatever reason, your home or your residence loses power, it automatically kicks in and your computer doesn't immediately shut off. A warning comes on, usually in the form of a beep or something from the UPS, and it gives you enough time for you to save whatever you're working on and shut down your computer properly before losing power. Now, depending on the size of the UPS you get, some of them might only be good for a 5-minute window, some of them a 10-minute, some of them you can have up to an hour, depending on the size. Obviously, you pay more expensive for them. But if you are in an area where power interruptions, even brownouts are where kind of the power dips and then comes right back on. It's like a split-second power outage. Well, those can play havoc with your computer. These things here, the uninterrupted power supply, are great because what they're actually doing is the power is not going directly from your house into your computer. It's going into this power supply. It's charging the battery, and then the battery is constantly what's plugging your computer. So whenever the power goes out, it's just the battery stops being recharged, and the charge that's currently in the battery keeps feeding your computer. So you never have any sort of outage or dips or anything like that. So again, if you live somewhere where power spikes or dips or power outages are an occurrence, you definitely want to look at a UPS, an uninterrupted power supply. Now, again, if you're not exactly sure what I'm talking about, I will include a link in the show notes to show you what sort of device I'm referring to. Now, along the same lines, if you don't have a UPS or you don't require one, you should definitely have some sort of surge protector for your computer. I mentioned power spikes. Well, sometimes a power grid can do some weird things and power will dip and then all of a sudden it'll shoot up. And if your computer is not protected, it can damage a computer. I've seen it happen before. I've seen somebody's computer, the motherboard, get fried on the computer because of a power surge. And the easy way to protect against this is to have a surge protector. It just drives me nuts whenever I go anywhere and I see somebody's computer plugged directly into the wall. That is one of the most dangerous things you can do for such an expensive piece of machinery. You can pick up a very inexpensive surge protector at any store, any hardware store or big box store that will protect your computer in case of a power surge. They usually have some sort of fuse inside so that if there is a surge of power, the fuse will break before it does any harm to your computer. Now, if you do get a UPS, an uninterrupted power supply, they are by default also surge protectors because any surge gets absorbed by the battery before it gets transferred onto your computer. So those two kind of are related. You get one or the other, but never plug your computer directly into the wall. You're just asking for trouble. Now, of course, if your main computer is a laptop, then this is kind of irrelevant. If you're in the middle of a storm or you think the power is going to go out or anything like that, you don't have to worry because you have a battery built in. So a UPS is no good to you. And a surge protector, for the most part, it's probably a good idea to still get one. So when you are plugging and recharging your laptop, it's not plugged directly into the wall. It's plugged into some sort of surge protector. But it's much more important if you do have a desktop computer like I do. Like my iMac is plugged in to a UPS. Now, the next peripheral for your design business is a Pantone color book. Whether you're working web, you're working print, you're working fabric, it doesn't matter what sort of designer you are, you will be dealing with color. And the best thing that you can have on hand is a Pantone book for your own reference, as well as showing your clients. Now, yes, it is less important if you're online, but sometimes you'll want that Pantone book, especially one that might have hex numbers included with it. Pantone has a whole bunch of different variances that you can get. I have the standard Pantone color matching system, as well as another one that shows you Pantone colors and the CMYK equivalents. Those are the books I have. Yes, Pantone books are expensive. Some people I know say, well, I'm going to look and see if I can buy a secondhand one. I don't recommend that, because depending on how they were stored, the color of the book could be compromised. I think Pantone actually says you should be changing your books every 2 to 3 years. I do find that a little bit extreme, especially at the price of these books. But if you keep them well, keep them in a dark place when you're not using them, they should last you years and years. And as I said, even if you're just doing web work, sometimes it might be as simple as somebody wants a website and they have a corporate color, but they don't know what the hex color is. And you might need to match something. They might not know what the Pantone color is, and they might give you something. Well, you can take out a Pantone book and match it to the business card or whatever it is that they present to you, and you can get the color from that and then use it in your web's work. So not as important for web designers, but if you do any sort of print design, a Pantone color matching book is a must. Yes, there are other companies that do put out color books, but Pantone is the industry leader worldwide when it comes to color. So if you go to somebody and say, yes, there's a blue, it's number so-and-so from this color matching system, they might not be able to match it. But if you tell somebody that you need a Pantone 280 blue, doesn't matter where in the world you are, they will be able to match that color. So a Pantone book is a definite must if you are doing any sort of print design. Now, another peripheral I want to talk about is an external hard drive for backing stuff up. Now, this could be for setting up a time machine if you're using a Mac, or some other sort of timed backup if you're on a PC, but it can also be just an external hard drive to transfer files over and clear up hard drive space. For many, many, many years, besides just being a graphic designer, I was also the computer tech, both at the print shop that I worked at and on call. I was doing it as a consultant for other businesses, mostly businesses in the design and print industry, but I would be their computer techs. And I can tell you that most of the time when they were having trouble with their computer, a lot of it had to do with hard drives that were getting too full. When we're dealing with graphic files, we can have some huge files. If you're dealing with Photoshop for some large things, it's not unheard of for single Photoshop files to grow to over 1 gigabyte in size. And if you do this day in and day out over a long period of time, your hard drives can fill up pretty fast. 80% full, it's kind of the threshold I like to use. If your hard drive is over 80% full, then you're compromising your system. In other words, your computer will slow down. It's not going to be as efficient, and it's just going to feel sluggish to you. So one of the easiest things to do when you have an unresponsive computer is free up hard drive space. So having an external hard drive in order to transfer files to is a great way to help protect that computer. Now, as I said, you can use it for backup as well. They're great for time machines. I actually have two. I have an Apple time machine set up here, as well as another just USB hard drive that I have. Both of them are set up as time machines. If you set up multiple, what they'll do is that they'll go in tandem. It'll back up one time to one drive, and the next time it does a backup, it's to the other drive, and then next one's to the first drive, and it goes back and forth. So I have two. In case one of them fails, I have the other one as a backup. Now, keep in mind that these are great for small things that need to be retrieved. Like they're backups if I have a problem. I have a file that I need to get a previous version. I can go into Time Machine. If there's a file that I needed to get off my hard drive and I need access to it a few months later, it's very easy to retrieve it from an external hard drive. But these aren't permanent backup solutions, because if something happens to your system or a natural disaster, we just had hurricanes hit in the Southern Americas and Central Americas. Huge hurricanes devastated some areas, completely wiped out some areas. Well, imagine if they had computers and external hard drives hooked up. Those things are gone. Not just that they're damaged. In some cases, those things are completely gone. So you do need some sort of backup solution to save you. If something like that, if some sort of disaster ever happens to you, whether it's a wildfire, a flood, a hurricane, a tornado, if you have your stuff backed up offsite, then it's just a matter of getting some new hardware and you can be up and running in no time. And for that, I do recommend Backblaze. I've signed up with Backblaze a couple of years ago, and it is so easy. You just set it up once and you never have to worry about it again. I do have an affiliate with them. If you visit resourcefuldesigner.com/backblaze, all one word, and they're very, very cheap. I think it's $50 a year for peace of mind. And I know that every time I save a file, every time something is changed, it is automatically being backed up to the Backblaze cloud. And if something happens to my computer, if tomorrow my house gets wiped out and my computer and my 2 time machine backups were destroyed, all I would need to do was purchase a new computer, hook up my Backblaze to it, and everything would be downloaded and I would be up and running again. And if it's a lot of information and you don't have the bandwidth to download, you can actually contact Backblaze, and for a small fee, they will ship you overnight a hard drive with your entire backup on it. So all you need to do is plug that hard drive into your new computer and you're back up and running that easily. So resourcefuldesigner.com/backblaze if that is something you're interested in. And for $50 a month, that's a no-brainer. But the peripheral I wanted to talk about was an external hard drive for your computer. Now, the next one I want to talk about is just a tablet or some sort of drawing pad. They are great to have. I have an iPad that I use, and sometimes they're just convenient to have for whatever reasons. Sometimes I like to, if it's a nice day, I'll go sit outside and I'll grab my iPad and I'll search through stock photos. If there's a project that I'm working on that requires some stock photography, instead of sitting at my computer here, if it's a really nice day, I'll go sit out on my deck or on my front porch and I'll bring my iPad and I'll scroll through stock photos that way and pick them that way. Now, I've mentioned before, I'm not an illustrator of any sorts, but if you are an illustrator, having some sort of tablet like a Wacom or an iPad or a Microsoft Surface or something like that is great for you. Now, to go along, if you do have an iPad, one software I recommend you look into is AstroPad. It's all one word, I believe. AstroPad is a software that allows you to mirror your computer on your tablet. So you can draw, like in Photoshop, if you want to do some stuff, you can actually, with a stylus, draw on your iPad and it'll make the changes in Photoshop on your computer. Now, AstroPad, I believe, are coming out with something new. They're in a Kickstarter or I can't remember which crowdsourcing platform they're on. I believe it's Kickstarter, but they have a new product coming out now that allows you to use your tablet as an external monitor, as a second monitor completely, as opposed to going in one direction. You can just set it up as a second monitor. And that's a piece of hardware. I believe you plug it into a USB port and it'll allow you to use your tablet, your iPad or whatever as a second monitor to whatever computer you're using. Now, another peripheral that maybe not 100% necessary, but very handy is a webcam. Now, a lot of computers do come with built-in webcams. There's a really good quality webcam in my iMac here. The problem with webcams is their positioning is not always the most flattering to somebody, especially if you're doing some work as you're talking to somebody. It kind of looks down on you and it doesn't put somebody in the best light. And if you're trying to look professional to your client, it's not always the best. So I recommend something like the Logitech HD Pro C920 webcam. That's the one I have, but any one will do. And what it allows you to do, first of all, they're very high quality video, but it allows you to move the camera to any position you want. And if you have maybe a small tripod or some sort of hand or something that can hold on to it, like one of those grabby things, you can position that maybe a little bit off to your side or at a lower level than your computer. And it just makes the whole image more flattering and easier. You can also adjust your light sources a lot easier that way, because with the camera directly in front of your computer, if you want to be lit up yourself, you basically have to put a light directly over your computer. Well, now you can light yourself from other directions and use the camera. And this is great if you do a lot of video calls with your clients. It is something I highly recommend. So any sort of webcam, but as I said, I like the Logitech HD Pro C920 myself. It's the one I have. And I'll include a link to it. And it's usually on sale for about $50, $60 on Amazon, so they're not too expensive. Now, I've been mentioning a lot of devices that plug in to your computer. This webcam that I just mentioned is a USB device. I talked about external hard drives. Most of them are USB. Even I mentioned AstroPad for the tablet. Well, AstroPad, if you want to use your tablet as a second monitor, their device that they're doing on Kickstarter is a USB device. Well, most computers have a limited amount of USB ports, so a powered USB hub is a really good peripheral to get for your business. Now, I say powered because if it has multiple ports and you just plug it into a regular port on your computer, it most of the time will not have enough juice to power some stuff like hard drives or the camera. Sometimes it will, but sometimes it won't. But if you get a powered USB hub, that's a USB hub that actually has a DC jack in the back that you can plug into your wall or your power bar or your UPS, then it has its own power supply, and anything that plugs into it USB wise will also be powered. So getting one of those means that you don't have to worry about running out of rooms or constantly pulling one thing out to plug another thing in, which is a real pain. Now, I had a couple of other things on the list here, but some of these I talked about in episode 88, a multi-purpose printer, scanner, fax. The fax part, not too important, but I did talk about this a couple of episodes ago. Great addition to a home office or a design business. A comfortable chair. That one merits mentioning again. You're going to be sitting in this chair day in and day out. Get yourself something that is comfortable. Same thing with a good desk lamp. If you're anybody that likes to work at night when it's dark, don't strain your eyes too much. Get yourself a good desk lamp. Now, the next thing I have on my list, you might not know what this is when I refer to a line gauge. Now, this goes back to the printing industry, but the line gauge I find is invaluable to anybody who's doing print design. Maybe not so much for web design. Actually, I'm trying to think if there's any reason for somebody in web design to have one. But anybody who's doing print design should really have some sort of line gauge. Now, line gauge refers to a wide array of tools. Some people call rulers a line gauge. To me, what a line gauge is I have this piece of, I guess you can call it mylar. It's actually a piece of film that when I was at the printing studio, when I worked at the print shop, I put out these pieces of film. I say pieces because I have a few of these that on them are printed several rulers. This thing is probably about, I'd say 18 inches, 19 inches. No, maybe not that. About 14 inches long, which is roughly about 35 centimeters. And on it, I have, first of all, various rulers. I do have a ruler in centimeters. I have a ruler in inches. I also have rulers in picas and points, which is a system that unless you're in print design, and maybe if you're not old school print design, you might not know what picas and points are. But I still do a lot of my measuring in picas and points. I know them better than I do inches and centimeters. But when I say it's a piece of mylar, it's a clear piece of film. So most film, when you're working in the print industry, it would be negative. So it's a black piece of mylar and whatever information would be clear on it. Well, this is the reverse. It's a clear piece of film and all the information is black on it. And as I said, I have these multiple rulers. I also have type gauge on it, which means I have letters showing me a 4-point letter, a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 96 point. And the way I use this is if somebody gives you something and says, I need this kind of reproduced, or, here's an old thing I need, and I need to get some more printed, and it has to be re-entered for any reason, I can put this line gauge on top of it and say they have a heading. and I want to match that heading. Or sometimes what's great is somebody will say, here's a pamphlet that was done for us in the past. We don't have the computer files, but we'd like something updated. We want the same look because it's going to go beside this pamphlet on the shelf. Can you make something that looks like this, but with updated information or different information? Maybe it's a different department. Well, now what you can do is use this line gauge. You put the type that I have that I mentioned, all the different sizes, on top of the printed material, and you move the line gauge around until you find the letter on the line gauge that is the same height as the letter on the printed piece. And then you know exactly what point size the font is. So you'll know that the heading that they used was 26 point or 27 point. The other thing that's very useful on this line gauge is there is a grid on here that shows leading spacing or letter spacing, if you want to call it, or line spacing. And it starts at a 6 point spacing, 7, 8, 9, 10. I go all the way up to 17 on this one. And what this is it's a bunch of lines. And when you put it down, say on a paragraph of text, you line up these lines with the baseline of your text, and it'll tell you exactly what the line height is on that paragraph. So you can figure out easily with a line gauge that you have 14 point type on 16 or on 17 leading or on 17 line height. And it's just a tool that I've used. I've had in my drawer here since I started my business. I used to use these all the time at the print shop, and it's in my top drawer here. And I pull this out on a fairly regular basis because it's so much easier to than trying to guess what a font size is, what a line space is. It also has on the side of it, I have line weights for frames or borders or lines where I have what a hairline at a 0.25 point, a half point, going 1, 2, 3, right up to 12 point line. So if there's a frame on a photo or something is underlined, I can tell exactly how many points thick that line is by just putting my line gauge over it. Now, I know that I'm trying to describe it and it's pretty hard to describe it verbally. So what I'm going to do is I will upload the file because, as I said, I created these myself. I'm going to upload the file for you to see, the PDF of these. And if you're interested in seeing what this line gauge looks like and possibly printing one out yourself, just visit resourcefuldesigner.com/line gauge. That's one word, line gauge. And you'll be able to download the PDF of this line gauge that I have. Now, you could print them off yourself on a sheet of acetate, but the problem is home printers and even copiers at a copy shop that can print on acetate, they're not always 100% accurate scale-wise. They might be 99.9 or 100.1, and just that 0.1 is enough to throw things off. So if you do decide to print these off, contact your local printer. And if you have a printer that still deals with film, the problem now is a lot of printers have gone direct to plate. But if you have a printer that still deals with film, ask them if they can print off a copy of this or several copies of it. And then you just trim it down to size and you have yourself a line gauge you can use. So once again, if you want to try getting one, or if you're just curious to see exactly what I'm talking about, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/line gauge. Now, the next thing I have on my list is a CD or DVD burner. Not so important these days, but every once in a while, I still get a client that'll ask me if I can burn a DVD for them, burn their files onto DVD. Recently, I've mentioned in the past how I use ScreenFlow to record videos of instructions to my clients on how to use their WordPress websites. Great trick that I learned a few years ago, and it saves so much headaches. Clients stop asking me all sorts of questions because they have the instructional videos to show how to post, if they need to put a new blog post up, how to make changes to their website if there's any sections they need to change. Well, these videos, I recently had a client say that these videos are great. I'd put them in Dropbox for her, but she asked, is there any way I can put them onto a DVD so that she can actually stick them and watch them and learn from them in her living room on her DVD player where she didn't have to sit in front of her computer and watch them. So I obliged her. I didn't see what the big deal was. I mean, they're short 2-3 minute videos. You can easily watch them on your computer, but she asked for them on DVD. So I burnt a DVD to her, and it's something I was glad I had one. Now I have an external. It was just a cheap, I think I paid $30 on Amazon for it. A cheap DVD burner that's a USB device. Again, powered USB hub, great for these extra devices you need to plug in. But every once in a while, you might need something like that. Or every once in a while, a client might still supply something. They might have photos and say, here's a DVD with all our photos on them, or whatever files. Yes, most days you'll get a USB stick or a thumb drive or something, but every once in a while, a client might still give you a DVD. It's not like they're extinct. They're going that way, but right now, it might be a good idea to have a DVD or CD burner. Now, the next thing I have written down on my list is just a reliable pen or pencil. I have a mechanical pencil that I've used for years, and it's the exact same pencil or style of pencil, I should say, that I had at the print shop. I say style because when I left the print shop, I brought my pencil with me, but it broke at some point, and I went back and I replaced it with the exact same pencil. Now, that's just me. I'm a little bit anal that way. I like my pencil, this particular pencil, but just having a reliable pencil or pen on hand in case you need to jot something down or have you're having a phone call with a client, they give you some advice and you need to remember it. The last thing you want to do is start fighting around for pens that might have dried up because they haven't been used in a while, or pencils with broken leads on them or anything like that. So make sure you have a good, reliable mechanical pencil or a good, reliable pen on hand at all times, just in case you need to write something down quickly and you don't have time to go run around the house looking for one. Now, the next thing that is a peripheral is not necessarily a physical thing, but if you are running your business from home, whether you're doing it full-time, part-time, you're just doing a few freelance jobs here or there, it is a great idea to get yourself a dedicated phone number for your business. Now, I talked about this back in episode 7 of the podcast, Considerations When Starting a Design Business, and how you should separate your home from your business, whether you're doing it part-time or, as I said, even if it's just the odd freelance job here or there. It is a great idea to have your own phone number. Now, you can set up a free Google Voice number and have it forwarded to whatever device you want. Or as Wes McDowell mentioned in episode 14, Moving Your Graphic Design Business, he uses eVoice to differentiate because he has everything go through his cell phone, but his business is an eVoice number. So that way, if ever needs to change, he has his own personal number that none of his clients know. And that's just the way it should be. You don't want your clients to know your personal number because then they start, who knows, calling you at all hours of the day because they might be working at 10 o'clock at night. So they automatically presume you do. Or you're a designer. We hear, it's stereotypical designer working the midnight hour. Well, if they're working, I might as well be able to call them. Or just while you're on holiday, you don't want to have to get calls from clients. So get a dedicated number, whether you're using a true number. I have a system through my phone company that's called Identicall, I believe is what it's called, through Bell here in Canada. And what Identicall does is it actually gives me a second phone number on my home phone. So it doesn't go through my cell. I didn't want my cell incorporated with my business. My cell is for my personal use. But my home phone has 2 different rings. If it rings with a single ring, I know it's somebody calling the home phone. If it rings with a double ring, so home phone goes ring, ring, ring. My business phone goes ring, 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 ring. Well, you get the idea. So if it has a double ring, then I know it's somebody calling my business line. It also tells my wife and my kids not to answer the phone if they hear the double ring. So I pay an additional $5 a month to my home line for that. And it's great because that way, after 5 o'clock, when I shut down, if a double ring comes on the phone, I just let it go to voicemail. Now, another thing is just extra charging cables or connecting cables for that matter. With so many devices and peripherals, you need cables to connect them. And it's a good idea to keep on hand. Whenever you get rid of an old device, hold on to the cables. I've got a container in my bottom drawer of my desk here that has all sorts of different sizes of cables. Because I never know when a client might say, here, Mark, I've got this stuff on a hard drive. Are you able to use this? Well, chances are whatever hard drive they give me, I have a cable that can plug into it and get the information from it. Also stuff for your phone. I have an iPhone and the lightning cable. Yes, I have one to plug into my computer, but again, USB ports, they're very valuable real estate. So I actually purchased on Amazon a 10-foot cable, lightning cable, that I plug into my power bar that's sitting under my computer so that it can easily reach. I have it go up the back of my desk and across the top of my desk, and it sits there. And if I need to plug in my phone or if I need to plug in my iPad, I have that one there. It's not connected to my computer. If I need to connect it to my computer, I have to use a different cable. But if I just need to recharge it, I don't need it connected into my computer. So this 10-foot cable I bought is perfect for that. I can have my phone on my desk. I have full access to it, and I don't have to worry about, being near a plug because the cable is only 2 or 3 feet long. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, peripherals for your design business, is actually something I just learned about recently. I didn't even know this existed. I went to have my eyes tested recently, and I wear very, very, I'm trying to think the word opposite of powerful. I need bifocals. I have glasses for distance. The only reason I wear them is because I get headaches when I drive. I can go out without them and I see almost perfectly fine. What I'm trying to say is I have a very, very small prescription. And the same goes just last time I went a couple of years ago. It was 2 years ago or last year. Anyways, I needed to get reading glasses because I was having a trouble. I can still read, but I have to really try to play with the page, move it forward and backward until I get it right and squint and all that. So they said I needed some reading glasses. So anyways, long story short, I got a pair of bifocals and I like them a lot. But I'm the type of person that I only put my glasses on when I go outside. I don't wear them in the house. So in the house, I do a lot of squinting in that. Now, I was told that I should be using them in the computer because when I'm in front of the computer, my glasses or my eyes are being strained. But I said, when I put them on, because they're bifocals, it's kind of odd looking at the computer because I got to tilt my head up in order to see the computer properly. And even then, it's at the wrong distance. So my ophthalmologist or optometrist or anyways, told me that I can get computer glasses. It's a special set of glasses that are geared. They ask me to measure how far I am from the computer when I normally work. And they give me a special prescription that's made specifically for that distance, so that I can see clearly when I'm working at my computer. And they'll help a little bit when I'm reading. I might have to hold the page a little bit farther away from my eyes, but they're much, much better than my standard reading or my bifocals that I have. The other thing is the glasses are coated with a special coating, and I don't remember what the name of it is, but it's a coating to protect from that blue glare that you get from a computer. Now, keep in mind, with these glasses, they told me there's 2 different ways. You can get a coating on top of them, but that coating that goes on top of them does affect color. It creates a little bit of a yellowish tinge to everything. So if you're dealing with photos or stuff that's color sensitive on your monitor, you don't want to be wearing those glasses. But that's the ones where they put a coating on top. But you can actually get a lens where it's built into the lens, and those ones don't affect color. And that's what I'm getting. I don't have them yet. I've ordered them, but I don't have them yet. What they do is they prevent that eye strain you get from staring at the computer all day. I don't know if that ever happens to you, where you're looking at your computer all day long, and at the end of the day, you've got a headache because you've been staring at your computer. Well, that's those blue lights that are emitting from the screen. Well, these glasses will cut those lights out so that you don't feel the eye strain at the end of the day. As I said, I didn't even know this existed until I just went a couple of weeks ago to get my eyes tested. And they said, oh yeah, we can get these. So I've ordered a pair, and they've yet to come in, but I thought I'd mention that as my last peripheral. I just added that onto the list. It wasn't on the original list because I didn't know about them. But anyways, those are the peripherals I wanted to share with you today. Now, I would love to know if there's anything. That's 2 episodes now, episode 88 and now episode 90, that I talk about things for your office or your business that you should use or have. Now, I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment on the show notes for this episode at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 90. And let me know if there's anything that you think I might have missed, anything that you can't live without in your graphic design business that I didn't mention, and share it with everybody else who looks at the show notes. And now, the question of the week. Now, before I get to this week's question, I just want to go back and say something about the question from the last episode I was just talking about, the episode 88, A Designer's Home Office Essentials. In that episode, Laura asked the question about online printing and about how to present the marked up invoices to your clients and all that. Well, in that episode, the answer I gave her, I forgot one critical thing. And that is, whenever you're dealing with an online printer, like she mentioned moo.com, when you're dealing with an online printer, many of these do have a reseller program that they offer. If you can prove that you are a reseller, and if you are a designer, you are a reseller. So what you do is you sign up for these programs, and then they give you a special portal where when you go in the prices you see are cheaper than the general public. So if you don't feel comfortable marking up prices, as I mentioned, when I deal with an online printer, I usually just mark up the prices. But if you're not comfortable with that, and for all transparency, I'm also a reseller on a lot of the online sites I use, but I still mark up the prices. But if you're not comfortable with that, you can simply become a reseller. And then when you go buy, say you go buy flyers or brochures or whatever, posters, and the general public would go in and see they cost $100 for whatever, 1,000 posters. I'm just making prices up here. But the general public would see $100 for 1,000 flyers. Well, when you go into your reseller portal, the exact same thing might be $90 or $85. And then what that allows you to do is then you can then charge your client the $100 and say and make the $15 as profit. So that was something I completely forgot when I was answering Laura's question. So I wanted to bring that back up. I did reach out to Laura afterwards because Moo.com, the company she said she's dealing with, I looked into it and they do have a reseller program you can sign up for. So I mentioned that to her, and I thought it would be a good idea to just bring that up on the podcast again. But I do have a new question of the week this week, and it comes in from Joseph. He says, I'd like to hear your opinion on mobile creative devices, such as the iPad Pro and Microsoft Surface tablets. Do you use one of them? And if so, how do you use it for design work? Well, Joseph, thank you very much for the question. I do have an iPad. It's not an iPad Pro. I have an older one. It's I think, third generation iPad. It was the first iPad that had a Retina display. That's the one I have. And as I mentioned earlier, I use it with the software AstroPad in order to do stuff. Now, I'm not an illustrator, so I don't find much use for these sort of things. The reason I use it is anytime I have to, say, close crop a photo in Photoshop, remove a background for something, I do have a really nice stylus that I purchased, and I can do that using as if I was drawing on the iPad as opposed to using a mouse and doing it on screen. So I see the image on my iPad and I can trace it on the iPad and remove the background. So anytime I'm doing something like that, I will call it up. But in all honesty, I don't use it that often. I know some designers swear by these things. There's some designers that use their tablets, like they don't even have a mouse anymore for their computer. They do everything with the tablet and they find it easier to click around. They scroll, they use all the menus, they do everything with the tablet and their stylus. But I'm not one of those people, so I'm not the best person to answer this question. I know there has been some discussion in the Facebook group on this. There are many people in the Facebook group that have said that they use tablets. So Joseph, if you are part of the Facebook group, and if you're not, you can join by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/group, and do make sure you answer the questions or I won't let you in. But if you are a member, ask the question in there, and I'm sure many people will pipe up and give you their opinions. But as I said, I don't have an iPad Pro or a Microsoft Surface. Actually, my wife has an iPad Pro, but I've never actually tried to use it. She doesn't have the Apple Pencil with it, but I've never tried to use it with my computer. It's hers, so I tend not to use it. But my iPad that I have, as I said, AstroPad works for me, but I don't use it for drawing or illustration or anything like that. I just use it for the odd tracing or when I need to see something mirrored and it's just easier to do it by hand. Now, I have used it whenever I needed something like a signature. If I needed to put a signature or if I needed to simulate handwriting and I didn't want to use an actual handwritten font, I actually wanted handwritten, then I have used it in that way because it's a lot easier to do that than it is to try to write something with a mouse. So I have used that. But that's as far as I can go, Joseph. I'm sorry I can't give you more of an answer because I don't use either of them. And I don't know the full scopes of how some people do use them for design work. But once again, if you are in the Facebook group, ask there. Many people I know have talked about it in the past, and they would be happy to help you out. Now, if you have a question you'd like answered on a future episode of the podcast, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and leave your question there. My mailbag is running fairly low. I'll have to double check. I'm not sure if I do have a question for next week. I'll have to go back through my questions and see if there's any that I missed. But even if there are a few, I know I don't have very many left. So if you have a question you'd like me answered, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback. Now, I want to share another iTunes review with you. This one comes in from RanTheMan91 in the USA. And he says, like a mentor, Mark, your advice for someone who decided to take graphic design seriously has been amazing. The information you give has been very helpful. I'm applying most of your advice to my business. I also love the enthusiasm you add to your episode. I look forward to hearing more from you. Well, thank you very much, RandTheMan91. I do appreciate the lovely 5-star review you left for me. I love all these things. And, I actually go back and read these from time to time just to see some of the nice things that have been said about the podcast and about me. I love, not that I need an ego boost, but sometimes, I'm just sitting in my office here doing this all by myself. And these reviews that I get on iTunes are affirmations that what I'm doing does matter and does make a difference. So thank you to RandTheMan91 and everybody else, wherever you are in the world. If you've left a review for me, I do really appreciate it. And if you haven't, you can visit resourcefuldesigner.com/iTunes, which will redirect you to the iTunes store in your country where you can leave a review. And if you're using the brand new iOS 11 on an Apple device and you're listening via the Podcasts app, you can actually leave a review directly from the Podcasts app now. So that's something they just introduced. So before I go, I want to remind you that the resource of the week is Grammarly, my number one and my only choice for spell and grammar checking on my computer. It is well worth the price to know that my writing has improved so much more. And if you're interested, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/Grammarly, and that is an affiliate link. I will make a small commission if you purchase using that link. So that's it for this week's podcast. Early next week, I will be deciding who will get the phone call for my very first Patreon supporter conference call. And I'll give you more updates as that goes along. But if you want a chance to be chosen, or if you simply want to hear the recording afterwards, become a patron by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/Patreon. And for as little as $1 a month, you too can support the show. So I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best with your graphic design business. And as always, reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.